Good afternoon. I'm Scott Yauck with Cobalt Partners. And
Stephanie Mercado with Michels Corporation.
Stephanie's an Acre graduate, and her birthday is tomorrow, so I just want to point that out.
More points, yeah.
So I got to question the firewall at the Rinka offices. I'm a little concerned about that. I don't know. Everybody names, maybe there's some confusion with the name Scott, so I'm not sure. But so tell me and I forget. Teach me and I remember. Involve me and I learn. And we are team S2, again, Scott, Stephanie, and then the Rinka team. Chad, thank you for involvement. Alyssa's here, and then we had some other remote help from the Florida office. So our dream is, I just want to kind of go through the agenda for the dream and how we present it. So we're going to talk a little bit about the context. We did a kind of deep dive into kind of the user assessment and the needs in the area, and went through an exploration process that we want to talk about, and then our proposed dream, and then some implementation thoughts on how we might handle that, and then the Q&A, of course. Everyone knows where the site is. It's strategically located between 43 and 41 interstates. It's located at the corner of 76th and Brown Deer Road. I also noticed it's between Bayside and Menominee Falls, so I had to take a little plug here, shameless plug for our One North project over in Bayside. But it doesn't end there. I took another shameless plug for Whitestone Station. And now that I know that Scott's involved here, I was going to put some of his all along the Brown Deer Road corridor. But anyway, I didn't want to violate any copyright infringement or do anything to violate the firewall at the Rinka offices. Just brief history. A lot of you may know this, but maybe some of you don't. Between the 1960s and 1970s, the Granville was developed in many ways as a suburb within a city. Northridge was actually opened in 1972. It served as a key economic and social hub within the area. There's a significant industrial base that developed in the area as well that created a lot of job opportunities within the region. The mall closed in 2003, so 31 years. That's a pretty short duration for a real estate asset for sure, leading to some disinvestment, blight, certainly in the area. The city acquired the site in 2024. I think everybody knows kind of the status for that, as Lafayette gave us some updates on that today. Thank you. Just a little more context, another aerial view of the site. Everyone's pretty familiar with it. Interior photos, for those of you that haven't seen it, it's pretty rough in there. But certainly on the lower left, you'll see one of the comments there, life changes. Sometimes I think we all agree life changes a lot recently, and so that's words to live by. So in terms of diving deeper into kind of the use potential for the site, we looked at some of the past planning that went on. So the Milwaukee Northwest Area Plan, which is part of the Comprehensive Land Use Plan, was a source for that. We looked at the Grandview Strategic Action Plan and Land Use Plan from 2017. During that plan, there was a market study that was done by S.B. Friedman. The UW organization was involved doing some charrettes. There are several focus groups that were conducted as well. Really the focus of those efforts, the output was industrial type uses with job creation, mixed use with a commercial focus, and residential with a neighborhood focus. And then the Engage Milwaukee, I know Lafayette referred to that, engagement hub, the community engagement hub. And I got caught up one night. I went in and looked at the site, and it had a lot of the potential uses, and it listed like 5 or 6. So I started keying them into my outline, and it kept saying show more, and pretty soon there were 100 of them. I keyed them all in. I don't know why I did that, but I kept going, keyed them in. So we created a little word cloud, and you'll see that there's a lot of different words that show up. Prison showed up a lot of times. I don't think that's a use that the city has in mind, but it showed up almost more than anything. You'll see based on the size, that's a true fact. We looked at adjacent land use plans and the plans for the subject area as well. And then really, as we led into kind of how we're going to dig into this analysis, we viewed the site, certainly I think it's the largest site the city has available for development. It's a symbolically important site for sure. It can serve as a catalyst for the community and reverse some of the negative impacts that have happened from the disinvestment in the area. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Stephanie.
Great, should I get a click? Thank you. So my background's in public health and its intersection with the built environment. So our approach really hones in on the understanding that a community's resilience is rooted on the individual health of the community. So we wanted to approach this through a health situation analysis and then a community-centered development theme. So what that means is what impacts a person's health outside of a clinic setting. And that's what the aspects of our development include and they speak to. So this process is inherently community-based. We recognize all the community outreach and engagement that's already been done. So all we want to do is build on it and also be responsive to the community members that have already been surveyed and have been living with this area that's been in blight for several years. So what's our role? Our role is to build an environment in a way that enhances job creation, housing access, environmental stewardship. It promotes healthy behaviors and financial stability. Again, speaking to the different health determinants that we'll like to address through the amenities that we propose. And so some of the research that we incorporated, and of course we go more into depth as this project continues, but we recognize that this is a young population. Most of it is under the age of 34. We also recognize that over a third of the population is Black, and with 29% being white and a growing minority population with Hispanic and Asian following. Also, there's a low-income population. We see most of the population falling between the 25 and 50,000 household income range. As far as educational attainment, it's a mixed bag, so that also helps us inform some of the amenities and recognize that people might want different things. So again, we want to be responsive. It's a highly renter population and rental burdened population. So over 50% of households are paying over a third of their household income into rent. So our approach, by having a community-centered process, we are able to layer on the social determinants of health. So again, what that looks like, what outside of a clinic setting, including a clinic setting, affects your health. We're looking at things like socioeconomic status, educational attainment, physical environment, employment status, social support networks, and access to healthcare. So as we continue on with the presentation, we'll highlight different attributes of our development and our ideas, and we'll see how we intentionally want these attributes to benefit or improve different social health outcomes. So these can be grouped into 5 categories. We're looking at education access and quality, healthcare and quality, neighborhood and built environment, social and community context, economic stability. And so here's our dream.
So our dream, we branded as well, Aspire MKE. We'll talk a little bit about what's behind that. So the vision was a couple things. One, and I'm going to read a little bit of this because there was a lot of intent that kind of went into the words, but to build an integrated physical, social, and economic ecosystem that's founded on mutual support, in which all participants can realize their full potential for holistic health and well-being across all life stages. The other piece of the vision was to create a scalable model for community revitalization that coalesces people, organizations, and resources to drive positive measurable impact in health, education, and financial stability. So this is really, it's a place-based, I mean, we're talking about real estate development, so it's place-based, but we want to go beyond the built environment and really include a set of strategies. So it's really marrying together a lot of strategies that relate to health and wellness and well-being, but not just in the physical sense, but in terms of educational attainment, employment, all those things, those factors. One of the things that Stephanie mentioned earlier, just those factors, there's statistics that the difference within the same city, if you live in one community versus the next, depending on how those factors line up for where you live, can have a difference of about 10 years in life expectancy. So it's a pretty big deal. And then we really see this being a vibrant, self-sustaining community, again, integrating these different types of uses to address these societal needs in a way that's frictionless and innovative in its approach. The members here, and we really want to create a community almost where people come here, by agreement, in the sense that they're agreeing to be bound by certain obligations, commitments to the community, that we hope will make them more engaged in the community. They're going to share resources. The idea, and we'll get into, of course, our design in a minute, but sharing resources, open spaces, communal gardens, wellness programming, educational opportunities, things that sound a lot like what Scott was talking about a little bit ago. But these community members are more than neighbors, they're friends, they're classmates, they're coworkers, and an interconnected support system. And again, the expectation would be when you come to the community, you're committing to being part of the community, engaging the community, maybe committing a certain number of hours a week to certain behavior, conducts, and so forth that are part of kind of a membership pledge. And the last piece, in doing some research on this, we started looking at kind of what our mission was and looked at all the various nonprofits and community-based organizations that are out there that have similar missions. And I was amazed, there's about 2,000 nonprofits in the state of Wisconsin, but we came up with almost 50 right here in the Milwaukee area that have almost the identical mission. And the idea of bringing those together, kind of coalescing that and focusing those resources to take a built environment and really create something special that I don't think exists, certainly in the Milwaukee community. Uh-oh. That's not good. Our time's up.
There you go, yeah. Thanks, Andy.
So our concept plan, and again, this is where I think the firewall is starting to, we just have the smaller arrows, but so we look at kind of the same thing, what's the transportation infrastructure on the site, how are the access points set up and so forth. Based on that, create an internal road structure. Again, we were intentional in creating a road structure and kind of connectivity that encourages engagement with people coming into contact with each other in a way that doesn't have a lot of dead ends and things that you might see in a more suburban type context. So our use, and we'll come back in a second, but it's a mix of uses, synergistic uses. We'll talk about what those are in a moment. But in kind of constructing these uses, we looked at how we address those 5 social determinants of health. So we created basically a matrix, and we took those 5 determinants and we looked at design aspects and kind of the programming that we'd have in this development and how those intersected and kind of tried to check the box in as many places as we could to really have some impact. So we have kind of overall guiding principles on the design, which is more intangible, but then we have a component that's related to housing, a component related to career development, community resources, sustainable agriculture, creative arts, health and wellness, and then kind of a sustainability undercurrent as well. So if this is, for instance, we created a matrix, and we're not going to go through all these. I don't think we'll have the time to do it, but we went through an exercise, and we'll highlight some of the uses. But for instance, this is a place-based, program-based development. With interconnectivity, there's external connectivity to the Cudahy Farms development that Royal Capital is working on to the west. But we went through this effort to take these various social determinants and look at the elements of the project and try to make those intersect to make some sense. Back to you.
So in looking at housing, so my grandma's 95 years old and has lived with my parents my entire life, and I think that's one of the reasons why she's 95 years old. And so when we're looking at housing, we wanted to contribute to that as like what makes a person healthy, what kind of housing would contribute to that. So we have a mixed bag. We have affordable housing. We're considering diverse housing, like we've seen before, in like townhouses, single family, multifamily, apartments, things that suit various generations. And then we segue into intergenerational housing, which would be my preferred method of living with an older person. And then senior housing and assisted living, as well as co-housing. So co-housing just encourages more shared common spaces. And here are just some examples, and throughout our site, these are scattered kind of throughout our site, yeah.
Yeah, right now the plan as shown represents almost 2,000 units, different styles of housing, as Stephanie said. Then career development, so same idea in many ways to what Scott's team talked about, but we had worked on a similar project actually in West Allis, which kind of falls under the Department of Public Instruction, uses what's called a CTE, Career and Technical Education. But we had programmed a facility there, and we could see something like that here. It's not quite, an MATC or a trade school, but it takes various aspects. So there can be automotive, there can be early child care. We had automotive, HVAC, and you partner up with private industry, hopefully as a sponsor. Some of that can actually provide services back into the community. It can also service external customers that would come into the site. So we created an element of that, which also has a piece of programming that's just kind of business skills and critical thinking and things that are kind of general that are skills that are needed today for sure. And community resources, another element that, again, checks many boxes. This included a community resource center where we envision financial literacy, some of the nonprofits potentially having a presence there, various, assistance with benefits, life coaching, financial opportunity centers, things of that nature as part of this community center. In addition, we were looking at other parts of the project that would include grocery. They tend to fall into community resources, early childhood care, which could be done through that other educational facility we talked about earlier. And then a community center that's more of an event space, an area for creative arts that Stephanie will talk about in a minute. But you'll see here some of the aspects of that, early childhood care. Thanks to Johnny V's brainstorming, we talked about making laundromats cool again, and maybe it's a place for socializing. All right, we are running short here, so we're going to move through quickly. Sustainable agriculture.
Right, so you can see some pictures. We want to encourage food, and food deserts have come up a lot in this area, so this is our way to respond to those needs. Small grocery stores, urban farming, beekeeping. Someone mentioned bees earlier. And then continuing, this is obviously a lot. It needs to be a lot to a lot of people. So what better way to bring people together than through the creative arts and seasoning our development that way? So we plan to include an amphitheater, art rooms, public art, music rooms, podcast studios, things that could serve as a pipeline from the CTEs over to like a real entrepreneurial career. Examples.
And finally, there's a health and wellness component. Again, I'll skip to there's health and wellness scattered throughout the development intentionally. There's a facility that would provide health and wellness, fitness type programming, but there's outdoor exercise equipment, there's trails. Pardon? Yeah, okay, all right. The health and wellness component. And then again, sustainability is throughout. I just want to comment once on sustainability if I can. All right. Okay, Bob. Perfect. A couple other things related to sustainability. We try to create a different model where there's some element of shared equity, whether it's like a limited equity cooperative or some community land trust, but a way that people are engaged differently here. Maybe there's rent to own components, things that create economic stability. One of the things, sustainability, again, firewall. We had a manufactured home facility. So some of the homes we envisioned as well being built there. And so through the educational piece, there could be people engaged within that facility. As some of the workforce, as some of the design of that building, then some of the houses. So it's kind of self-fulfilling and self-perpetuating, and also services to the third parties as well. Finally, just technology based. I mean, we think there's a community app that really ties all these things together in a way that there's a lot of communication. A community advocacy board that's formed as well. It's kind of a governance board for the community, really creating engagement. So it's a different approach, I think, on how you bring the processes together rather than just the built environment was what we were going after. Sustainability, and there are some precedents for this, by the way. There's one very close out in Denver, ARIA Denver, which is very similar. And implementation, we can talk about that another time.
We're obviously the group that hasn't slept.
Yeah, right, yes, right. And that's it. So, thank you.
Thank you, guys.